the class of 2018. My entire life, I've been the class of 2018. And I actually have a twin sister. So she was graduating, and, my entire life it was going to be I would walk across the stage right behind her because her name's Bryn. So she's before me in alphabetical order. And that was really, really hard for me that I wasn't going to get to graduate with her, college being older than everybody else. But
well, you can buy alcohol.
I know. That's something that's the only piece that I'll tell people I'm older, but I'm keeping the 21 piece of things under wraps a little bit.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, to Mics One JoeySooch. I am JoeySooch, and I'll be giving a mic to Maya. Maya, the freshie at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. She also had Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. We're on break right now, so I'm just resting and having time to do fun things like this. So
thank you for giving me your time to do the podcast. I've been trying to reach you for a while, but you've been so busy with college.
Yeah, the first term of school has really been an adjustment. I love it, but it's been pretty tiring.
It's a very exciting time, but we'll get more into that in a bit. But I wanted to ask, were you that girl that asked about college a few months back in our Odyssey meeting?
I was, yeah. I asked if anyone had any tips or anything. So,
do you remember what I said?
I have to say that I can't remember what you said. A lot of people gave me advice, but
I just said no. Say no to drugs.
Oh yeah, yep.
I mean, I feel like that's important. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, how is college going for you? Like you said, stressful but happy. How is that going for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the build up to the transition was definitely stressful for sure. I was like, don't know what I'm getting myself into here. But I mean, I love it here. It's definitely a lot of work, definitely an adjustment, but it's going really well. So I definitely am glad that I put in the work I did before school to get all prepared.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about your college experience, and also having a rare disease. It's a huge step to almost anyone entering the real world. It is the first time a lot of people go away from home. You are learning more about yourself and also more reliance on yourself. Sure, you can call your parents, but they all aren't close to you. You are surrounded by strangers where many won't have your best interest at heart. But let's talk about yourself first to lay the groundwork. You have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, with your joint that move further than normal range, joint instability, and dislocation, the full separation of the surfaces of a joint, scoliosis, and skin that can be stretched further than normal. What was your biggest concerns when picking a school?
So for me, my biggest probably concern, and I do have a couple of other conditions that kind of factor in as well, but my biggest concern was making sure that the school would be wheelchair accessible. I do walk, but for long distances, I have a chair that I use, a manual wheelchair that I use to get around just to protect my joints. And I had an injury a few years ago that I had to learn how to walk again after. So I'm not the best at walking yet. So my biggest sort of consideration, in terms of my Ehlers-Danlos was definitely making sure that the school would be accessible.
Are there any other accommodation that they needed to have, or I guess comforts?
Yeah. So there were a lot of accommodations. And one thing that I did when I was deciding between schools is I actually reached out to the Disability Services Office, and I asked them all the questions that I had about all the accommodations I thought I might need were those things that they were able to provide. And then the other thing I did is I asked them if they'd be willing to put me in touch with a student on campus who used a wheelchair, which I found so helpful to do that. I did that for both WPI and UMass Amherst because those were the schools I was deciding between, and just sort of asked the student all the questions I had about, the administration says one thing about accessibility, but what do you say about accessibility? So that was very helpful for me, I'd say.
You're saying that talking to the kids helped more because I guess they're more willing to give you an honest answer.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely good to talk to the administration as well, in disability services to kind of get a sense of will they provide this accommodation or that accommodation, but just to kind of get the actual scoop from a person who uses a wheelchair, another student, was really helpful as well.
What accommodation did you also ask for? Because I feel like a lot of people sometimes don't even know what they can
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah. So one thing that I did that was really helpful for me is I just Googled like lists of accommodations for like lots of different things. There's something called the JAN network, which is Job Access Maybe Network, which is for jobs, but it kind of lists like, oh, here are some different conditions, here are some, or different like sort of things you might have trouble with, and then here are some potential accommodations. So even though it's school and not a job, I looked on that. I just Googled lists of accommodations. I talked to people on Ehlers-Danlos support groups. If any of them had like gone to college, what had they done? So my accommodations are kind of split up into two main like categories. The first is like the housing accommodations, and then the other is more like the academic accommodations for in the classroom. And then this isn't really an accommodation exactly, but the other thing I did is I worked with the nutritionist at school as well as with dining services to make sure that my sort of diet could be accommodated. But in terms of housing accommodations, I asked for a door that would open easily, so one that doesn't have a key in it. So I have a key card for mine. It has a push.
Wait, that's a thing? Keyless.
Yeah. So that's something that I really struggle with is like fine motor control, kind of like opening a door with a key to unlock it. So they weren't sure if they could provide this for me, but it wound up happening is that I have just my student ID has access to my room because I have a key, like a key card.
So is this accommodation specifically for you or is it for everyone? And
No, so this is something that's just in my room. So my dorm building has, I think there's 3 accessible rooms in the building. So I got one of them, and mine is actually the only one that has both a key card open and it has the button to open the door. So
that's so cool.
yeah. I honestly, this is the most accessible place I've ever lived in my entire life. The bathroom has a button to open it as well as like a built-in shower chair. The laundry room has a button to open it. The trash room has a button to open it. It's incredible.
I want to live there now.
I know. I was not expecting all of the door opener buttons on the inside of the building, and I got to my floor and I was like, is this real life? Like, oh my gosh. So that was like kind of a nice surprise for me. And then other accommodations I asked for in terms of housing were to make sure that there's adequate air conditioning, because not all of the dorms have air conditioning, but if I overheat, then I'll like give myself I'll get hives. So air conditioning is really important. And then I asked for, so I was worried that because I have, some medical equipment and a lot of other pillows and supplies and everything and also my wheelchair, that I wouldn't have enough room in a dorm room. So they suggested that I ask for, and their term was extra room for medical supplies. So what they actually wound up doing is they gave me a double room, so a room for 2 people, but they just put me in it alone. So
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I have like a lot of extra space. I have extra drawers, and also I don't have a roommate, so I don't have to worry about, if I get sick, what's my roommate going to think? Or am I going to be allergic to my roommate's perfume or anything like that? So that was also really helpful in terms of accommodations.
Wow, that's really impressive how like far they're willing to go to accommodate you.
Yeah. I've been just like so happy with accessibility services, the disability services here. They've been like super great. They actually also let me move into school a few days early because, I wanted to move in before every single freshman on campus moved in, just so I wouldn't be, in the crush of hundreds of students moving in. So that was also like a very helpful thing that I didn't know I could ask for. I was just like, I'm going to ask anyways and hope for the best. So
I think that's what a lot of people, I think problem just like in general is that they don't ask a lot because they'll think, oh, they might decline me. But then like it's always better to ask more because you just really never know. Like having like to open a door just with your key with your card is like awesome. Like I would just ask
Yeah.
that just if I did any accommodation. I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely something that I noticed. And even, I've made a couple friends here, and one of them has like a dietary issue, and one of them has like ADHD, and they're not asking for like accommodations. They're not like, they're not trying to meet with the nutritionist or anything like that. And I'm like, you have to, like, the worst that someone can possibly do is say no. Um, so that's something that I've learned. I'm a little older going to school. I'm 21 and the freshmen are all like 18 or so. But that's like a big advantage for me is that I can ask for help and I know to ask for help and I will.
So it is it. So all these accommodations was it all pre-planned before you said yes to the school?
So not exactly. So I did meet with accessibility services before I said yes to the school and kind of I didn't get like a guarantee that these accommodations would be in place, but just kind of like how willing they seemed to work with me before I got there. And then also, I think talking to that other student who was able to kind of give me some insight on that, he was like, yep, it's going to be great. Like the unfortunate part is that WPI is on a pretty large hill. So
Oh
he was like,
no.
other than that, it's great. Um, that and the snow, but he had nothing bad to say really at all about can't like the actual administration or anything like that. I kind of had those sort of like accessibility services was like, yeah, that's something we can do. And then after I sort of accepted and put my deposit down, then I sent in my documentation from my doctors, and then they sort of made things more formal from there.
How I should have researched it, but how big is your school?
Think we have about 4,000 undergrads. That's a good question. It's pretty small. Yeah, so we have 4,000, 5,000 undergrads. And the campus itself is in the middle of the city, so it doesn't really sprawl a lot, which is nice. And actually, one of the other things that they do for me is my dorm is right in the middle of campus, so it's like right on the quad. And then that's also an accommodation you can kind of ask for. They can't guarantee it, but they can kind of try their best. And then they actually move my classes for me if they're like too far away from each other, or if it's in a building that's not wheelchair accessible. That's something that they're like, yep, we'll just move it for you. So the physical size of the campus isn't too bad. I have a motor for my chair, so it's not bad at all.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask because I noticed on your Instagram, like sometimes you're like standing and then sometimes you're in a wheelchair. And
Yeah.
and just from I don't know you personally, so it's like I don't know if you have like bad days where you do need a wheelchair because rare diseases and chronic illnesses are kind of unexpected.
Yeah, so that's actually one thing that I was really worried about going to school because I don't use my wheelchair all the time is what will people think? Are they going to be like, why is this girl sometimes walking and not like, will they understand? And like, I was pretty worried about that, coming in, not only am I in a wheelchair, I have health issues a lot of the time, but also like sometimes I'm not in the wheelchair. But it actually kind of worked out really well for me. So the how I use my wheelchair is if there is a bad day, like if I'm really pretty dizzy that day, or if I like hurt my knee or my ankle or something because I'm really prone to injuries, then I'll kind of be attached to my chair a little bit more. I'll use it, even to like go to the bathroom or things like that. And then, working with my physical therapist and my occupational therapist, sort of the plan we made was that if I was going to class, I would use my wheelchair, so that, I wouldn't have to have my backpack on my back because that could be dangerous.
Mhm.
And then also because, the wheelchair is set up for me ergonomically so that I'm always in a good, safe position when I'm sitting. So we figured that if I brought my wheelchair to class with me, then I would be guaranteed a seat that would be appropriate for me. Um, so I use it to get around campus, especially because there's a lot of hills. I'm not good at that. And then,
Wait, are you saying that you need a accommodation of a special chair in classroom too?
so we could have done that. That we could ask for a special chair. That's a little more difficult, especially because I have classes in different locations around campus. So I just bring my wheelchair instead because my wheelchair is that specialized chair for me. And then it helps me because I just, if I'm going from class to class, I can sit in my wheelchair and things like that.
I'm guessing, well, I don't know how is the layout of your classroom? Are they those one where there's like tables, or they're like those like old school kind of desks?
The classrooms that I'm in all have like a table that I can roll underneath. So it's like wheelchair accessible. And if my class is ever like assigned to a room that doesn't have that, they'll either move it to a classroom that does have a table for me, or they'll put a table into the room for me.
Yeah, I did the hard way where I did my classes and classroom that had the long desk, so I didn't have to like ask them for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just like, I guess I could have asked, and they could be like, okay, fine, but no, I took the harder route. So
Yeah.
good on you for knowing how to help yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like it's really important to have confidence in your disability services when you're choosing where to go to school. That was actually a pretty big factor for me choosing between WPI and UMass Amherst, is that when I talked to the disability services at UMass Amherst, to be honest with you, I wasn't terribly impressed. The woman that I was speaking to didn't totally seem like she knew what she was doing. Whereas when I talked to WPI's accessibility services, they were like so helpful, so on top of things. So having confidence in them was really helped me to have confidence in myself being able to be independent when going to school.
And I think I'll also add that since you're older, that 3 years I think helps a lot, and from 18 to 21 helps
Yeah, it really
tremendously of
does.
knowing like what you need too.
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah. And I think also, having a rare condition, people don't really understand. And especially for me, having to rely on PCAs sometimes. So I've had someone help me with certain things for a good handful of years now. I have to ask if I can't wash my own hair because I can't lift my arms up high enough, I have to ask a PCA to do that for me. So
What's the PCA?
a
Oh,
personal care like assistant or attendant. I don't know what it quite stands for, but just someone that I hire. They help me with washing my hair, doing the dishes, making my bed, doing the laundry, things like that I don't have like necessarily the arm strength or function to do myself.
are you talking about when you're at home or when you're in college, or both?
Yeah. So when I was at home, I had someone come like every night to help me, help me make dinner, all of those things. And now that I'm at school, what I actually wound up doing is I hired another student to do those things for me. And it's a lot less work because I go to the dining hall, so I don't have to make my own meals. So I hired a student. She comes and helps me twice a week with, laundry, dishes, washing my hair, things like that. So that's something that I really, really wanted to not have to bring in, a PCA from a company, because I didn't want to be, that girl that someone comes in and helps her, from an outside company. And with COVID, that makes it difficult as well. That was one thing that I was really adamant about, was I'm going to hire a student as my PCA so that I can kind of feel less like the weird girl who has people come to help her.
Hey, that's something you do coming from your, do you pay them personally, or does the school provide that?
No, so the school isn't involved at all. What they basically were like, you hire someone, if they're from outside the school, then they do like a background check and things like that. And then because I hired a student, they just had to give her key card access to my dorm so she could get up to my room. But I don't personally pay for her, but through my insurance and through some programs that support me, they pay for it.
Oh, that's super awesome. Sounds like you are set.
Yeah. I'm very thankful for that.
I'm like glad that you had a positive experience, because when I was in school, I actually went into college being able to walk completely, and then I went out of college not being able to walk in a wheelchair, and I didn't realize how inaccessible things were. And then I also, I guess I wouldn't say jealous of you, but like you have a more solid head on your shoulders on knowing like what you need and didn't need. And when I was going to my college times, I was so out of it mentally just from my physical, just being like sick and stuff. So I couldn't
Yeah.
even like, hey, like this is inaccessible, like come and help me. I was just so like focused on myself to do things. Is there anything they could do to make it more accommodating? Because it sounds like you are completely set.
Yeah, I mean, everything's gone really well for me. I think one thing that me and, my teachers and my whole team, treatment team and everything, we very purposefully waited for me to go to college until I was healthy enough to really be able to focus on academics and social life rather than my medical conditions. So that's something that I think gave me an advantage was I didn't just, graduate high school after 4 years and go straight to college. I took extra time. I've spent probably the past at least 8 months, like probably more like a year, like with getting ready for school as my main focus with all of my doctors, with my teachers at high school, everything like that. Um, and then the other thing that we were really conscious of is going into school. I have a condition that's complex. It changes. There are flares, there are injuries. It probably will get worse over time. Well, when preparing for school with sort of the mentality of like, it's going to go well, but let's prepare for all the worst case scenarios just in case. So that I think has been really helpful for me. I have anxiety, so it's easy for me to think of all the worst case scenarios, but that's something that we were really trying to be really intentional about was things like, even though right now I don't need to do like a direct transfer from my wheelchair to my bed, is my bed at an appropriate height that if I needed to, I could? If I needed to go to the ER, which ER would I go to? Do they know I'm coming? All those things kind of help me feel more confident that even if or when really my condition does get worse, that I'll have supports in place.
I mean, your anxiety is not weird because you literally have a good chance that something bad could happen just because if you talk to like I've been interviewing a lot of other and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome people and they've been having to prepare because especially you're in college you don't really have anyone to rely on except yourself.
Yeah.
And even let's say someone helps you, you have to tell them like what you need because you're the only one that knows you best, except maybe like
Yeah.
your parents. But even then, it's just. But like, would you be willing to talk about how come you took a gap between high school and college?
Yeah. So it's a little complicated. I actually didn't technically take a gap. So technically, I got my diploma, my high school diploma this May. Um, so there's not technically a gap, but basically, what wound up happening is halfway through my junior year of high school, I got sick and I was in the hospital for a very, very long time. So I sort of did school when I was in the hospital, in and out here and there. But that really slowed me down because that was a total of almost 3 years that I was not in, attending school every day in an actual school. And then I finished all of my academic requirements at the end of 2019. Sorry, I'm trying to think a year's time. The pandemic messed everything up. I finished all of my academic requirements at the beginning of 2020. So right after COVID hit, I finished all my academic requirements, but we delayed my graduation by a year because we just wanted to get me more practice in a rigorous academic setting after I'd been away from academics for so long because I was in and out of the hospital. And this is a phrase I say a lot, but hospital school is not real school.
Wait, that's a thing?
Oh, just like, the hospital that I was at, they had classes that they had like school and tutors and things like that, but it was not, their focus was treating the patients, not keeping them in school. I've been an honors student. I was taking AP classes and they gave us schoolwork as something to do while we were in the hospital, but it wasn't like academically rigorous.
So your school didn't like help you. It was more like the hospital took over your education.
More or less, yeah. They're technically like it was an outplaced, I was an outplaced student. So technically there was a sort of like special education school sort of program that ran the academic program at the hospital. Um, they just weren't very academically rigorous. They weren't kind of what I needed. So when I was in the hospital, actually, I wound up getting a tutor and doing AP calculus, just me and my tutor. She came twice a week for an hour and a half. And that was like the closest I got to real academics, I'd say. I mean, that was real academics, but for me,
it just seems like you're saying that they provided schooling, but you were so higher caliber that it wasn't like cutting it for you.
yeah, I think also it was very clear that the main focus was not academics. The main focus was, you know, the treatment at the hospital. So it made sense that it wasn't, you know, oftentimes we would just do like a word search or watch a movie. It was just more something to do. So that's just kind of, it slowed me down a little bit. But because I was in the hospital, like it became clear pretty quickly that I was not going to graduate, you know, on time with the rest of my class.
How did you feel about that?
At the time, it was devastating. You know, I was the class of 2018. My entire life, I've been the class of 2018. And I actually have a twin sister. So she was graduating, and, you know, my entire life, it was going to be, I would walk across the stage right behind her because her name's Bryn. So she's before me in alphabetical order. And that was really, really hard for me that I wasn't going to get to graduate with her. That was really just devastating. But I think at some point I realized that I wasn't on the same path as her. And that was okay because I had to focus on getting healthier. And, you know, I wound up graduating 3 years after she did, technically. But after that first year, it was like, I'm already graduating late, so I might as well graduate very late. But it was definitely a long process. I remember the day she graduated, just crying on the floor, the hospital floor, like the whole day. It was really, really devastating. But
no, I mean, I totally understand how you want to keep up, but your health was keeping you behind.
Yeah.
But now, how do you feel that you're like so much older than everyone else in your freshman class? Like, do you feel empowered now, or?
I mean, honestly, now it's really not as much of a big deal as I was kind of worried about it being. I think, you know, age is definitely a factor. But I think for me, like, I just tried to find friends who are more mature. So even though I am older than them, it's not like a glaring difference. And then I also, you know, missed out on a lot of social development because I was not in society for a long, long time when I was in the hospital. When I was in the hospital, I lost most of the friends that I had, things like that. So there are some ways in which developmentally I am a little bit closer, socially, a little bit closer to people a year or two younger than me. And it doesn't matter as much as I thought it was going to. I was really worried about that, you know, going into college, being older than everybody else. But
well, you can buy alcohol.
I know. That's the only piece that I'll tell people I'm older, but I'm keeping the 21 piece of things under wraps a little bit.
Oh, okay. I see you. I see you sneaking alcohol into the dorms.
No. I can't drink. Anyways, I would drink because it would mess with me because of my medical conditions and my medications and things like that. But
yeah, of course. But just the idea of it, you could totally do it. You could totally get away with it.
I very much could.
Like they see you carrying like bags of medical equipment. Like, you know, one day it could just be all bottles and bottles.
Yeah, no, it's funny. One thing that I did is I really tried to minimize, I don't really talk about my health a lot. And then I very intentionally tried to make sure that a lot of my medical equipment and things like that in my room are a little bit more out of sight. But a friend came into my room the other day because they had like fallen when they were rollerblading and had a big scrape on their arm. And I was like, I've got you. I've got the gauze. I've got the tape. I've got all the supplies. And it's funny because I don't necessarily, I try not to think about how different I am from all of my peers, especially like with having a lot of medical conditions. But, I have a suitcase under my bed that has all of my extra medication, the things that I don't use every day, all of my medical supplies that I don't use every day. And what I did was, it is a college. I do have medications that I would be worried about someone maybe taking, prescribed to me, of course, but if someone else took them. So what I did was, instead of getting a medication safe, I just got a suitcase lock. So I have a suitcase underneath my bed that's filled with all of my extra medical supplies that just has a suitcase lock on it. So I feel secure, but I also don't have like a gigantic like medication safe.
So you just hope they take the wrong right back that you're like safe.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about like, so like when I went to visit my school now, I'm 28 and like I'll see these like 18-year-olds and they're just like babies to me. Like, do you have kind of the same, I guess, feeling towards them that they're like immature and like young? And because like as chronic ill people, we kind of had to grow up earlier and be more mature just because we had to, and most people don't. So sometimes it takes them a long time to get to our levels.
Yeah.
So like, how is it dealing with freshies that they just think they're on top of the world and all of that?
Yeah, that's definitely, it's a little weird. And I really do agree with you that, chronic illness ages you quickly, in terms of you grow up fast. I was 16 when I was diagnosed, but I just skipped all my teenage years, really.
We went right straight to the elderly age.
I know, exactly.
We need the wheelchairs and the mobility aids and all of that.
More medications than my grandmother takes, the whole 9
Exactly.
yards. Yeah. So I do definitely notice, there are a lot of people, on my floor in my classes that are really immature. It's definitely strange. I think my friends, we kind of found each other because we were a little bit less immature, more life experiences, things like that. I do have a couple friends as well who are neurodivergent. So they kind of, or they have, more like invisible disabilities or mental conditions. So they kind of get it a little bit more. And I think that that's really helped me adjust a lot, is that I do have some friends that aren't as immature, but sometimes I'm just like, oh, wow, you guys. Yeah.
It's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of mentioned it before, but I wanted to ask. So I was talking to Anna Laurent or Lauren. I'm sure you know who she is.
Yep.
And so I was interviewing her, and she had a unique, I guess maybe not unique situation, but in her hometown, everyone knew who she was and her condition and such. And then when she went to college, she had a choice of express herself who she is, like what disease she had, to advocate and such, or just be quiet about herself and just, go through life because she seems like a normal person. Otherwise, like if you never, really hang out with her, you would probably never get something wrong with her. And maybe it's the same for you, that maybe most people would never think you're different. Maybe the wheelchair gives it away.
Wheelchair gives it away.
But
Yeah.
even that didn't really tell the full story. But like, how did you like think of, like, before going to college, of like if you wanted to advocate or like tell your what you have, or you're more going to quiet route?
Yeah, that's something that I definitely thought about a lot. And, I talked with some, like the adjustment counselor at my high school who was really helpful. And, we practiced when like we came up with situations and we were like, oh, if someone asks you like why you took so long for high school, like, how are we going to play this? I really did very intentionally try to make sure that I downplayed my conditions as much as possible because, if you get to know me, it's a part of who I am. It's a part of my life, but it's something that I try not to publicize. I mean, obviously people see the wheelchair, but I didn't, I think I spent so many years in high school and things just being nothing but a patient. I mean, I was in the hospital for forever and all of that. And I wanted to really get away from that and kind of like, obviously, it's still a part of who I am, but not really make that the biggest part of who I am at college. So, in terms of like advocacy and things like that, I will, I've we had a pep rally last month where they were sort of like throwing like t-shirts like into the crowd and things like that, and I was at the front of the crowd and I almost got trampled in my wheelchair.
Oh
Um,
no.
and so that was something where I met with like student activities and other sort of administration, and I was like, nope, not okay. um, so in terms of advocating more to the school, I definitely do a lot of that. And I'm on the Commission on Disabilities in my hometown, so that's something that I'm actually able to continue doing. So I'm doing, still doing some advocacy here and there, but not necessarily like with my peers.
Well, I mean, yeah, I noticed on your Instagram you don't really advocate much. You only advocate on like on the holidays, like
The rare
Ehlers-Danlos.
disease day, yeah.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of I guess it's the same for me too. That I won't advocate as much as like some would do. Like every other post would be like their condition, and I mean, to me, I feel like
Yeah.
it's too annoying because like at the end of the day, you are a person and you're human, and it's like yes, it probably played a big part of you, but at the end of the day, you're Maya, like you have a person, and like you have others, like you're disease is not you. It's like you have other
Yeah.
things to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. I really try hard to make sure that I stick with that because it's very, very easy to get lost in your disease and just have that become who you are. And, when you are making Instagram posts, and there's nothing wrong with all of your Instagram posts being about your condition, but that just to me gets me stuck in the past. And
It
I
just
don't find it productive.
yeah, just it seems like you have kind of somewhat trauma from it, and you're just trying to put it in your past for now and just kind of enjoy what you have now because you've been in such a, I guess, shitty situation for such a long time that you just want
Yeah.
to enjoy life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very easy to get trauma from having a rare condition or a chronic condition of any type. Medically speaking, doctors are, I'm sure you've encountered some wild doctors yourself. But
Hey,
yeah,
I totally understand where you're coming from, and I was in the same spot as you. That I didn't really advocate for myself at all. Like obviously, I look way different from everyone else, but I never really expressed myself. And then I did like senior year in 8th grade, but then I just stopped for a while again because it's like I didn't want it to be me. Like I wanted people to like me and not my disease in a way. And then,
yeah,
but like now I'm more advocating for it because it's like a huge, it's like a huge asset to me in like the social media world. So it's like, hey, I have this gold mine I'm sitting on. I might as well just use it to do something, you know?
yeah, yeah. I think it's very much personal. Like everybody has
Mhm.
their own sort of journey,
Yeah.
everyone has their own outlook on these things. But to me, for everybody, for a lot of people, college is when you can find yourself and reinvent yourself and all of that. So I really like kind of want to stick to that. Yes, I have Ehlers-Danlos. I use a wheelchair sometimes, but also like I joined the chorus and I have a job teaching workshops on the one we're doing right now is going to be sewing a tote bag. And I love flowers and wear pretty dresses and things like that. Like,
You're just doing normal 21-year-old things right now.
exactly. Yeah. And that's really important to me, is to really remember that I am more than just my condition.
Well, you are definitely more than that. If I wanted to interview a zebra, I'll get a zebra.
Yeah.
But before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote, anything? The mic is all yours.
Yeah, I think just anyone who's thinking about going to college who has a rare condition, I think it's a lot of work, and it's really, really scary too, especially if you're going to live on campus, but it's so worth it. And that's, I think, really what anyone who is thinking of going to college is worried about it. It's a lot of work, but it's so, so worth it. And I mean, I'm so happy here, and it's just the best thing I could have done, I think. And even though my journey to get to college was longer and it was slow and it was different, I think if college is something you want to do, you should do it, and don't let fear or, medical conditions or your sort of anything like that hold you back.
Yeah, I think the two takeaways from this is ask for everything, even if they say no, at least so they say no. You never know. Like, I would have never bothered to ask for the keyless door. That's amazing. And then I think the other big advice is talk to someone on campus, because
Yep.
they know the campus way better than the people that just work there. They go home at the end of
Yeah.
the day. They don't really know. So I
Yeah.
think those are two big good advices. But I want to thank Maya for coming on. I want to thank everyone for listening and watching. And I'll see everyone next time. Bye. Okay.